today we're going to start with a big topic in the sports world today, and that's the MLB Lockout. We're 13 weeks into a Major League Baseball lockout after the collective bargaining agreement from 2017 had expired on December 2nd of 2021. The MLB Players Association and the MLB have been meeting to attempt to come to an agreement to draft a new collective bargaining agreement. At the time of this recording, not a lot has been accomplished, but as days go by, new information comes out to notify fans of the game, including us, what kind of discussions have been taking place. To be clear, the lockout is simply a tactic put forth by the Major League Baseball owners to influence quick action by the Players Association to get a deal done quickly without the thought of losing out on regular season games. As we approach Monday's deadline of, February 28th, then the season will not start on time if a collective bargaining agreement is not drafted and signed and put in place. Unfortunately, pitchers and catchers were already supposed to be reporting to spring training on February the 15th. Opening day is currently scheduled for March 31st. From the looks of things right now, that day is in jeopardy. The MLBPA and the MLB have until Monday afternoon to get a deal in place. So we're going to talk about what is holding up everything. What are the players looking for? What are our owners looking for in terms of a new collective bargaining agreement? I'm going to start off. The talk between the sides on basically surround core economic issues, including the collective balance tax, the competitive balance tax, which is a fancy word for saying the luxury tax, pre-arbitration bonus pools, and minimum salaries. Currently, the CBT, which is the collective balance tax, or the competitive balance tax, I'm going to screw that up 1,000 times. The competitive balance tax, which is the luxury tax, or a salary cap in baseball, increased from $195 million in 2017, and it increased every single year up until the end of the current CBA expiration date of 2021 at $210 million. Currently, the Major League Baseball Players Association is seeking to raise the threshold to $245 million in 2022, and of course, that will increase every year in terms of the length of this current CBA. For layman's terms, for people that don't know a lot about baseball finances and the Major League Baseball, the CBA or the CBT is going to be basically how much money a team can spend on their current players. We saw an impact with the Mookie Betts trade with the Boston Red Sox when they said, we can't afford to pay him. We'll take a huge penalty for going over our luxury tax. So they decided to move on from Mookie Betts. They couldn't afford to pay him. The penalties for going over the CBT would be a percentage of a fine, and it's increased for each number of occurrences that it happens. So if a team goes over the luxury tax more than a couple times, then the penalty obviously increases in terms of fines. And I think draft status is also a penalty as well. What are your all's thoughts on where we are currently at in the negotiations, and what do you see happening with Major League Baseball?
Yeah, so I think neither side is even relatively close to getting a deal done. There's this massive gap between the two, and technically the owners are responsible for the lockout. They locked the players out of their facilities and out of the league. But I think the reason the sides are so far apart is because of the negotiations in the past. Previous player unions honestly kind of botched them, right? They haven't kept pace with the other leagues. They've put themselves behind, and now they're asking for so much that the owners are not willing to give. And I don't know that I want to pick a side, but if you look at the state of baseball right now and the MLB, I don't know if the owners can give what the players are asking. I don't know if the money's there. This league is the bottom of the big three in revenue per player. They play the most games, use the most facilities, have the longest season, so all their operating costs are higher, and they have the smallest profit margin of those three major leagues, and it's not even close. 11% of MLB revenue is profit for the teams, where the NBA and NFL are both over 20. So I think they have to come to the realization that, unfortunately, baseball is having a dip in viewership. It's not as popular as it once was. The game's slowing down, right? Pace of play is getting longer. Last season, 36% of plate appearances did not even end in the ball in the field of play. It was a walk, a strikeout, or a home run. And I think we can all agree it's much more exciting to see a double play turned or somebody legging out a triple or diving catches. Like, those are the plays that fans get excited about, that get the reactions. And until they realize that baseball isn't moving forward at the pace of those other leagues, I don't think they can ask and try to compare themselves to them.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points there.
Yeah, I would agree 100% that baseball is definitely the smallest. Baseball, kind of gets struck through the mud in the big sports media industries where, they have taken the steps to try and make the game better, which I think honestly has made it worse. Like the whole, a pitcher has to face three batters rule. I think that's absolutely terrible. I think it's stupid. But what we've seen, Frank and I played baseball in high school, and the game has changed so much, not just between the lines, but just in how specialized everything has gotten. I mean, I know when I grew up, every weekend was going to a camp or going to some catching practice or something. But now you're seeing there's more light on how, like, the Dominican Republics have these baseball leagues or schools where kids are 5 years old and that's what they learn to do, and then you end up with Juan Soto, who is
Yeah.
19 years old and winning World Series for you. And he went
Yeah.
turned down what he just turned down like 350 million before this lockout. So
It was like a 13-year deal or something
yeah,
along those lines.
so I mean, everything in baseball, which I can't really speak to high school football or basketball, but baseball especially has gotten so specialized. And there is, high school baseball is probably on the downside right now because kids care more about their summer ball teams and getting that exposure that high schools, I mean, unless you're in the state championship, you're probably not getting. So, and I think that's kind of what's culminated or brought us to this point where, the owners, they have to pay to get good players. I mean, we saw the Dodgers basically buy their championship 2 years ago. And now players know they're able to get that money. I'm looking at the tweets. I don't know if you saw what Walker Buehler put out there, ace for the Dodgers, put this up there, then deleted him. So he's smart. But, this isn't millionaires versus billionaires. This is workers versus owners. The value is subjective. We are extremely lucky to do what we do, but the numbers don't line up. I appreciate the fans getting where we're coming from, truly. But please tell me how what we, the players, are asking for is crazy. Inflation happens, markets rise, money grows. Ask the owners, they're all rich. Um, why would you agree to less than even an inflation level income raise? Would you take that at your job? Which I think that hits it right on the head of what this is all about is, you know, you've seen the Mike Trouts, the Bryce Harpers, the Tatis Jr., all the deals they're getting, and you see those teams spending money, but then you see what the Tampa Bay Rays are doing and the Oakland Athletics, and they're barely spending any money, but yet they're still competitive. And, that's where we need to somehow force teams to have this a salary tax or something to where it is more competitive and players are getting what they're worth. Because I'm not sure how many baseball games you guys have been to, but I moved out to Cardinal country and it's expensive to go to a game. I mean, we're lucky that Kelsey gets us some work tickets and we get to at least go to the game free. But
Yeah.
if you want a beer or food, I mean, for a person, if I just got nachos and a beer, that's $20. That's so I mean, it's and there's especially in St. Louis, Cardinal country, those fans are crazy. I'm a big Reds fan, so it's hard to go watch them, but they're always sold out. So there are definitely cities that are doing better than others, but they aren't hurting. I mean, they might not be only making, what'd you say, Coop, 12%
Yeah.
margin, but that's in the grand scheme of things, they're still making money, and it's the lockout was definitely it's needed between the two sides to hash things out.
So we're on the verge of something that is not uncommon in Major League Baseball. You've seen an you've seen an NBA lockout before, but those usually don't last very long. I don't know, back in the day, I think there was a strike in the NFL, but Major League Baseball goes through this almost every time a new collective bargaining agreement takes place. Right now, the union has indicated that they're not going to agree to an expanded postseason format for 2022 if they do not play a 162-game season. That's been in the discussions. The Major League Baseball, they want an expanded postseason. They want that extra wild card play-in game because for them, that extra couple of teams in the playoffs results in $100 million in additional revenue to the Major League Baseball fund. But the Players Association, they propose a 12-team postseason, and they're seeking – the MLB is actually seeking a 14-team format. Me, as a fan, I like the extra wild card, but I can see where the two sides are going to differ. Some of the other differences between the two parties is players want minimum salaries, and we've talked about this already, that players want to be paid what they're made. And I think Coop talked about the other leagues, and you talk about the big three. But I'm going to throw in the NHL for example. The average rookie in the NHL, their minimum salaries with similar rosters, because baseball and hockey have similar size rosters, NHL rookies make $750,000 as the league minimum. In 2021, in the Major League Baseball, the minimum was $570,000. Player agents, they want a $1 million minimum to keep up with increasing league revenue. It should not be lower than $700,000 in their opinion. Another thing keeping the sides apart is service time manipulation. We've seen this before. I'm a big Reds fan, just like Dave said, but there's so many players that don't get brought up when they're ready, so they can extend their service time and not hit free agency as soon so they can get more bang for their buck, so to speak. Good players are stuck in AAA all around the league for the simple fact they want to keep them down there so they can get an extra year out of them in free agency. There's a certain time where which they can bring them up, and that you see that all the time. So the players want to stop that. Also, the players want to eliminate tanking on purpose for draft picks, which happens in almost every major league. But tanking in baseball has happened. We've seen it happen with the Pirates. We've seen it happen with the Orioles. So what they do is they don't put an emphasis on winning so they can rack up first-round draft picks and early-round draft picks. With everything else on the line, there's simply not enough energy to fix the tanking issue in one negotiation. But the players have mentioned doing a major, kind of like the NBA with the lottery. They want to take the top 7 picks, put them in a lottery, and then pull out the ball and say, hey, this person has the first pick. That would eliminate the need for tanking because you're not going to guarantee yourself a first. You may not guarantee your first 7 picks. You might be the last of the 7. So that would deter some problems with that issue.
Yeah, I would touch on the tanking part, which I think is kind of funny to think about when you talk about baseball, because I know when we were in high school, we had 50-round drafts, MLB drafts, which, it was always, you'd always wake up on that Sunday of the last day, like, maybe they might say my name, just maybe, because there's 50 rounds. I mean, it's a lot of freaking players, like 1,500 people. So, and now I think it's down to 30, which COVID, they only did, I think it was a 6-round draft, in 2020. And then last year, I believe they did 20 rounds. But even if you look at the landscape of 1-1s that made it, that's such a small percentage. Baseball is such a funny sport, and how you can be the highest rated player. That doesn't mean anything in baseball. You still got to go out there and perform. Now I've had a couple teammates go play minor ball, and I've kind of heard of how that landscape is, and if you are a high round pick, you are going to get every benefit of the doubt to try and prove yourself and try and get you work your way up. But even then, even though you got the 1-1, it doesn't mean it's a can't miss. It doesn't mean you can't miss, swing and miss. So I think the tanking part is the thing that frustrates me most as a fan is you see the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Giants, the Cubs. They're the teams that, every trade deadline, they're the ones that are active. You don't see the Cincinnati Reds going and making a splash. We go pick up the Matt Harvey from New York after he's been doing all his cocaine and everything. So it's it's I would like to see something where the smaller market teams are incentivized to go get players, to not just be the sellers where they cultivate the homegrown talent and then they ship them off so they can go get paid somewhere else.
A lot of that comes back to the individual salaries again, right? So the basis that the players union is asking for is all these increases on numbers, the luxury tax, arbitration eligibility, minimum salary, but it all comes down to individual contracts on an individual basis. Primarily they're young players. They want better care taken of them. And, I don't know if you can fix it with the ways they're suggesting and these annual increases going forward. I think it really needs to be a restructuring of the contract format in MLB. You can't have every rookie that you sign to a contract making $1 million when you're handing out $350 million contracts to Juan Soto. Maybe it's not, you're going to have your cap. You're going to have that luxury tax, but maybe you look at putting caps on individual contracts. That's going to create parity, right? You can't just have one team buying the best player, and then if they, want to fill their roster, they can pay a little extra money. Put those hard caps on individual contracts because the focus of the league is the young players and the guys that are underpaid.
Yeah, you're seeing an influx of talent across the major leagues, and even in AAA, you're going to see a ton of guys that are major league worthy. I know for a fact that, you look at all these minor league prospect rankings lists, and oftentimes you see people that are on those lists that have made their debut already, and knowing for a fact that they're going to be headed back to the minor leagues before they come right back up full time. What happens is a lot of these teams, they leave them guys down there just so they can kind of capitalize on their time that they get to keep them, knowing maybe the plan in the future is to develop them into a all-star type caliber player, and then trading them off for some free agents and minor league prospects and some cash considerations and hell, a damn washing machine. But I don't understand the business side of it. I just want to watch competitive baseball. And the fact that it is a business, and we all know that, it's just, I don't like the fact that business is put first for the owners. If you're an owner of a baseball team and you take on that challenge, I feel like your first priority should be to put a competitive team out there, and the money will take care of itself. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think what's crazy is what's not getting talked about. I mean, it's getting more brought to light, but is the minor league kind of system and how bad it is, honestly. Because I mean, I know I follow a Twitter account where it's like minor league horror stories, and it just guys anonymously will DM them and tell them like their living situations where it's 10 guys in a hotel room where 3 guys sharing a bed, and then I saw one where a dude's W-2 was $11,000 for the year, and it's hard to talk about or even just say like, oh man, $500,000 minimum for going into the league, which that's per game. It's all prorated, but you just think about those late round draft picks that make it into the league and then become Hall of Famers, how much crap they went through, how many bus rides they went through, how many late nights they just, probably were like, all they probably ate was a piece of bread and peanut butter on it. It's, and they're expected to be top performing athletes. So, and I think that's what's missed in this lockout is all those guys have already reported. They're down there at the spring training, and they're hoping to make it. I mean, that's the kind of real bad part about this is we're talking about the guys that already did it, already made it. They're made their money. They just want more. It's the guy. I mean, they're fighting for the future, but at the same time, those guys are down there playing while this is being hashed out.
Yeah, and we've, in the state of Kentucky, we've seen a lot of, really good prospects that, me and David actually played against go through the minor league situation. And then, they were really good high school players and really good pro ball players. But, like, if they're within the first 2 or 3 years of being in, minor league baseball, if they don't see it coming to fruition, they're coming out quickly based on just the pay and the conditions. I seen a pay stub from a former. He's a coach on Twitter now, but Zan Barksdale played pro baseball, and he would put a old check stub out on Twitter, and I think it was like $900 for 2 weeks worth of work or something like that. Or I think it might have been a month, $900 a month. So, like, you think about your living situation now, and we all looked at, when we're kids, we want to play pro ball, but we only see what happens at the highest level. We don't see what happens in the 4, 5, 6 levels that you have to go through to get there. It's not all glamorous, and baseball's not a glamorous sport. If you ever played, it's a sport in which mental fortitude is of high importance. You can't be a head case. You can't be somebody that, you get your feelings hurt easily. You can't be that kind of person in order to play baseball and play at the highest level. So these guys, once they get to the major leagues, they've been through some shit, and they've seen a lot of things that a lot of us normal people don't see or they have to go through. Basically they're professional athletes living in poverty. You don't really see that in any other sport. So I feel for them.
That's why we're talking about it.
The lockout hurts these guys more than it does the guys that already have, money stashed away in the bank. They have these big, nice cars. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I know they want to play ball, and that's what they, grew up loving and wanting to do. But those guys are all right. The ones below them, even the guys in AAA. I mean, you've driven through Louisville. You saw the Bat Stadium. There's nothing in Louisville that's extravagant. It's a huge city, but like there's nothing that's going to jump out at you and say, hey, that guy makes a lot of money playing professional baseball.
Yeah.
So
that's just what you got to hope is that, as they start to compromise and get to a resolution here, that those minor league players are included in the deal and they're represented, and because I know there was a lawsuit by a firm out of St. Louis 2 years ago. I'm not sure if that's still got legs or not, but you just hope that those minor leaguers get taken care of and they get so that conversation can go away.
And any year they can just up and say, hey, this minor league market, for example, the Lexington Legends, we're just not going to affiliate you with the team anymore. We're going to let you go. So now an organization like the Lexington Legends have to, audible, and, they're an independent league team now owned by Brandon Phillips, among other people, which they've landed on their feet, but there are a lot of teams that haven't, minor league, baseball in Kentucky is huge. We love our baseball here. And, people want to say we're a basketball state, but like youth baseball here in the state of Kentucky is running rampant, to be, quite frank. And people love their baseball, but if you talk to a young baseball player under the age of 17, they'll tell you right now they don't watch baseball. They just play it.
Yeah. And I think two things with that minor league system. One, like you said, baseball's huge in Kentucky. We don't even have a pro team. It's becoming a regional focus. And those fans are transitioning to those minor league teams in their regions. I've watched more Lexington Legend games in my life than I have watched MLB in person. And this week I bought a Richmond Flying Squirrels hat.
No, yeah.
Those minor league teams are growing in popularity, even though, like you said, those players are kind of being forgotten about in the big scheme of things. The only mention I've seen in this negotiation about minor league was with that tanking conversation and limiting the transitions from AAA to the majors, sending players down, at the end of the season, sending them down 5-6 times. And in the update I saw on Friday, the union dropped that request. That was something they took out of what they wanted, trying to make way with the league. But if your focus is going to stay on the players that are at the major league level and not in those minor league systems, then what do we think about minor league unionizing themselves, making their own representation? Because everything we've heard, everything we've talked about is minor league minimum salary, minor league luxury tax, minor league revenue sharing. And their focus is on the young guys, but like you've both highlighted, those young guys are being forgotten at the lower levels.
Yeah, I think that the minor league, I mean, I agree. I think a minor league union is probably needed. I think it's a little harder, though, to say who leads that charge because, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's aspirations is to get to the pros or to the majors. And, you know, you would need a good group to go in there and, you know, probably a former big leaguer to really grab the bull by the horns and lead that charge. So I think it's a great idea, though.
Yeah, that's definitely something I would like to see happen. I could see Corky Miller being the guy to lead the charge in terms of maybe representing the Reds minor league organization, because I think currently right now he's a career minor leaguer in the Reds organization, but now I think he's actually on the managerial staff for the Dayton Dragons, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
or
I'm pretty sure he is.
something like that. I've been to a couple of Dayton Dragons games, and I watched Jay Bruce, Chris Heisey back when they played for the Dragons, and you could just see that those guys are future pros. But there's a lot of guys down there that you'll never hear of again. You know, they've made a career out of being a minor leaguer, and if based on what we said, once they quit playing baseball and they are a career minor leaguer, what do they have? They don't have much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless they come from a decent family. You know, some of them work jobs in the off season. That's just kind of unfortunate. And with a sport that I love a lot and love to watch, it's kind of disheartening when you see that. And I think it starts at the top, like we've talked about. You know, the players want more, obviously. The owners want less and to make more. So
Yeah, and I know that you know, my college baseball coach, he had his time with the Twins, but you know, I think he did like eight or 9 years in the minors. And I think one of the biggest things that he talked about was time of service for their pension because they actually have a pretty good pension. And I think I'm looking it up right now, but in order for a major league guy to earn a lifetime pension, they have to be on the big league roster for 43 days. And I know that he talked about that because he was up late one year, and he said that was the only thing on his mind was how can I make sure I am here for 44 days to make sure I get a pension. And I think even the minor league has one as well, but I can't find it right now. But I think that's also something to think forward for the minor leaguers. You know, maybe reducing that pension to make it more incentivized for guys to stick around and try and see how far they can go.
yeah, I have a graphic that I'll put up here on the screen and let it hang around for a while. But basically, it has the different CBT tiers, and then it has a red line for the average team revenue for the entire MLB. And then it has a yellow line that has the average opening day payroll for every team. And you'll see that the average team revenue greatly outweighs the average team payroll. And the CBD tier and the average day payroll have kind of flatlined. There's a huge dip in 2011, but they're flatlined. They're leveled out. But the average team revenue is on a steep incline, a steady incline, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. So we're talking about, you know, revenue shortages in the game of baseball. Where's the money going? That's what I want to know. Where's it all going to? So what's happening that we can't pay players that are good? Obviously, baseball, you see these contracts. They're outrageous. They throw money at players. They're the biggest contracts other than professional soccer. You know, your Messis and your Ronaldos and all those guys, they get paid big bucks. Don't get me wrong. But baseball players that have been in the league for, 2 years? I think Mike Trout is massively paid, well worth it, by the way. Soto is going to get paid, well worth it. Mookie Betts, well worth it. All those guys that are getting paid these humongous salaries, they're doing okay. But that's a top 0.01%. That's not everybody. You have starters that plays on, you know, championship level teams that they may make $1 million a year, but they're really good baseball players and they contribute to major league championship teams. So I think that there's a big fluctuation in worth and readiness, and I don't want to say fair because life's not fair, but there's a huge disparity. I think there's something there that could be fixed to help levelize labor costs, in my opinion.
Yeah, I got a couple things on that. One, I think baseball has the highest operating costs. That's where a lot of that revenue goes. They have a stadium that is the least versatile for other events. They have the longest season. I mean, you're talking about all the people it takes to run that stadium, turf maintenance, all your staff on your team. But when you're talking about those individual contracts, the star contracts, and I would like to see this in every sport. This is just my idea. I haven't read about it anywhere. I think they need a cap on individual contracts, which other sports do have. NBA's got the max, the super max if you're signing with the team you've played for X amount of years. But if you truly have a star, that polarizing player, then build into that contract once they have their player max some type of revenue sharing deal individually with them and your team. Like, how much money has LeBron James made for the Lakers? He should still be at the league maximum with other players in that league so that the salary is distributed evenly and those younger players are getting their cut, and then give him a cut of the revenue he's bringing to your team. Same thing with Mike Trout. But on a popularity basis, you talk about the three biggest stars in sports, probably Mike Trout for baseball, LeBron James for basketball, and Tom Brady for football, right? Those are the three names you associate as the best in their sport right now. Poll of just random people on the street, 74% knew who LeBron James was. 76 knew Tom Brady. 22 knew who Mike Trout was. 22%.
So
I think that's the problem. He's a baseball star. I agree. It's hard to say he has the polarization of those guys in other sports, and those other sports are capped individually. Baseball, and you guys correct me here because I don't know a lot of detail, they don't have an individual cap.
No, they don't that I know of. Like even the luxury tax that we talked about earlier, that you can go over the luxury tax, you just have to pay a penalty. And if you do it more than once, your penalty increases. So you'll see teams go over it if they feel like they can, address the penalty. That's probably what happens to a lot of teams that are thinking they can win a World Series. They'll take a penalty to win a World Series.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the Dodgers and the Yankees. I think those are the two. They're always buyers. They don't care about that luxury tax. They're in the big market cities where, Sunday night baseball is always going to be there. So I think it's a good point, Coop. Mankind is very smart these days. You look at, I just blanked on his name, but the Mets guy who gets paid $1 million every year.
Bobby Bonilla.
Bobby Bonilla Day, and he, 20 years ago or however long he worked on his contract, he didn't defer his money. So, there's definitely different ways to structure contracts to where, hey, don't include this in my salary, but, kick this to me in a different way. So I definitely agree that contract structure.